Hello fellow sewers, it's Diane from Spencer Og Sewing Patterns here with another Friday freebie as part of my 30 minutes make series. So here it is, the effortless twin pouch. It's an amazingly quick and beginner friendly project, needs very few components and you can make it in just about any shape and size to suit your requirements. In this video, I'll give you the dimensions and all the instructions to make this medium-sized version, which is ideal for makeup or your phone and a few pens. But if you watch to the end, I'll also tell you how to download a free PDF with a few other sizes too. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe while you're on here. And to receive a once monthly note to your inbox with what's new and tutorials and patterns I'm releasing, along with offers and competitions, do sign up to my newsletter and I'll add all my links in the text below the video. So if you're ready, let's make a start. So for this project, we're not going to need much. We're going to need an outer fabric. So choose a light to medium weight fabric, quilt cottons, canvas, waterproof canvas, nothing too heavy. I'm using a 300 gram waterproof canvas today. It's rather light, but it's got a coating on the back which makes it quite firm, so I won't need to use interfacing on there as well. It's a really economical choice of fabric. It cuts down on interfacing time and of course it's white clean. If you are looking for ideas on what fabrics to use for your bag making, by the way, I've just recently made a video on that and I'll link that in the text below and above if I remember to do that. Moving on to the lining fabric. We just need a lightweight fabric such as quilt cotton. We'll need an interfacing, so choose something light to medium weight such as Pellon SF101 or a Vilene F220. And fuse that to the outer and the lining unless you're using a coated or a firm fabric like waterproof canvas as I am today. You're going to need a zip, 12 inches or longer, a number 3 nylon coil type zip, a dress type zip. Try to stick with this sort of size of zip. A number 5 or anything heavier does get a little bit bulky in this bag because we're folding it over. Optionally, I'm also suggesting a small piece of pre-made bias binding. Again, you don't need to use it, we can just zigzag neaten the seam in there if you don't want to use it, so it's not a problem. But this is a 5/8 inch or 16mm bias binding, pre-made. And again, optionally, a small piece of Velcro. I've just used about 3 inches here. So it's the hook and loop tape, any colour you've got in your stash. Just a quick note, not to add foam or fleece, as they're too thick for this project. Stick to your light and medium weight fabrics with your recommended interfacing. The seam allowance is 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch for the seams and 6mm or 1/4 inch for the zip, but I will remind you as we go along. So let's make a start. So first of all, let's cut our outer and our lining. We want to cut both of these 9 inches wide by 18 inches high. Cut them accurately. Both pieces need to be the exact same size. Cut one on top of the other if you can, just to be sure, and press your fabric before cutting just in case it shrinks. Whatever you do, don't make your lining smaller than your outer. I know I do it all the time, and as bag makers we all want to do that, but it won't work for this project. So just make sure they're exactly the same. It doesn't do any harm to press your zip too, or press your zip tape, as some zips do have a little shrinkage in them and it helps to create a straighter zip insertion. Use a zip or a piece of continuous zip tape that's about 3 inches longer than your top zip edge, that's the shorter edge. So in this case we've got a 9-inch top edge, so we'd use a 12-inch zip or longer. Mine's a bit longer, it's just because I've pulled it out of my stash. We just want a little bit of extra to hang over both sides to make it easy to top stitch when we get to that point. So if we're ready, let's go sew. So our first operation is to insert the zip. So take your outer fabric. I do like to baste mine on first, rather than do it in one sandwich. So lay your outer fabric right side up. and on one of the short edges, lay your zip right side down. We want a little bit of zip hanging over on both sides, that's why we're using a longer one, it just makes life a lot easier. So leave about an inch on the open end of the zip. About an inch hanging over on that side. Obviously this zip is a lot longer. It's just what I had hanging around my stash, so I've just grabbed it. I could have cut it down really. So we're going to clip that along the top edge. I'm going to leave a couple of inches on the side of the closed end of the zip. Basically, the longer you leave the tail on the closed end of the zip on anything, the easier it's going to be to top stitch after. So clip that in place. So that's right side of zip facing right side of fabric. And then I'm going to baste that in place close to the top edge. So you could do it in one, you could put your lining fabric on top and do it as a zip sandwich all in one, but I do prefer to use this method because it always gives me a consistently straight zip, and certainly if you're learning to insert zips, it's a much better way to do it. If you need help on achieving a perfectly straight zip, I have a video on that too, and I'll link that below. Worth a watch again if you're new to zip insertion. So I'll baste that in place. So I've just basted that within that 6mm seam allowance, so less than the seam allowance I'm going to use to insert the zip itself. So place it flat again with your right side facing up, your zip still facing downwards. Grab your lining piece and place that face down on top. And match up all the edges and clip in place. So we've sandwiched our zip in the middle there, and now I'm going to stitch across that top edge and take a 6mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to flip it over because I find it easier to stitch from the side that I've already stitched because it holds the fabric in place better. So there we are. It's the first side of my zip attached, so if you open that out and take that to the ironing board, flip your fabrics with wrong sides together now and give that zip edge a good press. So they're nice and pressed crisp. Make sure your fabrics are still matching exactly at the bottom. You can still trim them at this stage if you need to. So I'm just going to top stitch that zip edge now, about 1/8 of an inch or 3mm from the folded edge. You can do a double line of stitching if you like to give a twin needle effect. A longer stitch length for top stitching is attractive too. And so keep snipping any thread ends, then you don't have any poking out at the end. So just one line of top stitching, but as I say, add a second line of top stitching if you like. So now we're going to repeat with the other side. So I'm just going to grab the outer and fold it upwards with the right sides together. So the other short edge meets the top of the zip tape, or the free edge of the zip tape. I'm going to clip that in place. Just briefly flip it over to make sure that everything's matching. Make sure it's all in line. Yeah, so we're leaving the lining loose now. We're just basting this one side at a time to help us achieve that nice straight zip edge. So again, I'll baste across the top of that zip, close to the top edge, so within the 6mm seam allowance or less than the 6mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So that side's basted in place. And now I'm going to attach the other side, so flip the unit over. So you're looking at the back of the zip, and fold your lining up so that the short edge reaches that top edge of the zip tape too. So you're now right sides together with your lining. So your one folded outer is behind and your folded lining is in front. So fold that up to meet the top edge and clip that in place, line everything up. And now I'll stitch that with my 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so that is my zip attached. How easy is that? So just flip that through, and we're going to take that to the ironing board and give that a press. So find where your zip is and open it up just for ease. And we can turn that through now. So just before we top stitch that second zip edge, let's take it to the ironing board where I'm at. And I'll give that second side a nice firm press first. So that's our second side pressed. Now we can top stitch along there again, 1/8 of an inch or 3mm from the folded edge. Again, 2 lines of stitching if you prefer. This is where the longer zip tail comes into play, of course. If your zip tail was here, or you had a fixed zip there, you're going to struggle to get in to top stitch it right to the end, so that's why it's better to have a slightly longer zip tail. It doesn't need to be as long as that. If you are using continuous zip, by the way, do zigzag the end so you don't lose your puller. Trimmity trim trim, make sure there's no thread ends anywhere because you won't get them at the end. Much better to do it now. There we are, just check your zip is inserted beautifully. So with the unit the right way out, like this, make sure your zip is closed fully and sitting directly on top, exactly where you're going to want it to fall in the finished item. And flatten it out. You want to make a snip at that centre point at the bottom on both outer and lining. Let me grab my scissors. I'll make a bit of a crease too. Just snip through both outer and lining. Make that snip less than your seam allowance, i.e. less than your 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. We don't want it to show afterwards. The reason we're notching is that we want both sides of this pouch to match up exactly. We don't want one pouch bigger than the other, so we want to make sure we've definitely got the centre point at the bottom. So optionally at this point you can add your Velcro. So to do that, just roll so that those notches are lying directly on top of your zip. So we've still got the bag the right way out. Just swivel the outer and lining around so they're halfway. So you can see my notch is sitting directly over the line of my zip. Just clip it or pin it in place, same on that side. Just fold it in half along the zip just to make sure that they are exactly the right size or matching. So I'm going to place my Velcro. I want to place it on the inner sides of the pouch here. So just to do that, fold it in half. I've actually put some double-sided tape onto this Velcro. You can also get sticky Velcro, but I do hate the sticky Velcro because it really gums your needle up. So I'll just take my double-sided tape off. So I've got the two sides stuck together at the moment. So just to position, lift one of those sides up and place it around about in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact. There we go, in the middle, and then fold that back down and press it down. So you've found a position that will match on both sides there. So open it up again, but separate the Velcro at this point whilst leaving it on the fabric. This is where the sticky Velcro comes into its own because it won't shift, but then it also gums your needle up terribly. So I can now stitch those on. So I'll take these clips off for now because I only want to stitch it through the outer fabric. So I'll open the zip again. As I say, this Velcro is completely optional. You can also add cam snaps at the end or rivets at the end if you prefer, just to hold those two pouches together. But I do like the Velcro because you don't have to be exactly spot on with the positioning when you're applying it. It's a bit more forgiving than cam snaps. So I actually wouldn't put cam snaps on until right at the end. I wouldn't put them on here because every millimetre you move a seam is going to throw off your cam snaps. So when we're sewing those, just pull the lining out of the way. We're just stitching them to the outer. Do it on the free arm of the machine if it's easier. I'm just stitching a box around the outside of the Velcro. Keep your lining back out of the way. Other one, lining out of the way. So trim any loose threads and use a thread that matches your Velcro. Obviously I'm just using the turquoise for speed. So regardless of whether you added the Velcro or not, proceed from here. So I'm going to undo my zip fully and turn the unit through so it's inside out. Now I find it helps to actually stitch this open edge close, so just run across it with a line of running stitches close to the edge. It helps to keep everything in position. Just a quick stitch really does aid the positioning of everything. So, inside out, let's look for those notches again that we placed in the centre, and we're going to position our zip directly over those notches. So our zip is now in the centre, the unit is inside out. So make sure they are lying exactly on the notches and clip in place. And we'll just double check that that's folding up nicely. So you can see the middle of the zip is lining up exactly with that notch I made. Fold just to make sure everything's lining up. So if your zip is folded across the top exactly, your two pouches should end up the same size. If they're not, you've still got time to adjust. You just need to move your zip one way or the other. But if you're over your notches and your notches were in the central position to start with, then you should be fine. So let's clip along those side seams. So this is where I mentioned earlier, you don't want to be cutting your lining smaller because otherwise it wouldn't fit in. So clip those in place. This should fit exactly. Again, that's why you don't want lots of foam in there because they won't fit exactly. And then we're going to stitch those side seams with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do make sure that your zip is in the middle or open 2/3 of the way. And I didn't mention that before, when you were stitching over, just to catch those ends in, make sure your zip puller is within the bag opening space. So now make sure it's half open or 2/3 of the way open, because we need to turn it through that afterwards. So let's stitch these. That's our side seams done. Make sure you've trimmed up everywhere. So as you can see, these side seams are going to be visible inside the bag. So you've got a choice here of whether to bind them or to zigzag stitch them. You honestly don't see very much of them at all. You literally just see this little piece at the top here. But I'm going to bind them today just to show you how to do it. But you can just zigzag neaten them. So just chop off any excess zip now. Both sides. Make sure that that line is nice and straight. As I say, just go ahead and zigzag neaten those if you like. I'm going to use a little bit of bias binding. So I'm going to grab a piece just slightly longer than the length of that side seam. Now, I'm lazy, so we all know to attach a piece of bias binding, we should do it properly. Obviously, open it up, stitch it along the crease, fold in the sides, fold it over, and then stitch it again. But you know what? Nobody's going to see this at the bottom. Nobody's going to see it anywhere. So I'm just going to do it the lazy, easy way. I'm going to fold that bias binding in half and just stick it over the edge with some clips and sew it in one. And I'm not even going to turn it under at those very bottom edges, because you're not even going to see them. So for speed and ease, just fold it directly over. Clip it all the way along. Doesn't have to be a matching binding, it looks nice in a contrast too. As I say, you would normally fold those ends under as well, but as they're hidden in the very bottom of the bag, I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's not like this is on display on the outside of a bag, it's literally just to neaten this seam. So I'll just snip it to match the correct width. Don't tell anybody, it's very naughty. Don't tell a quilter or I'll be in trouble. And then I'll stitch along there, close to the edge of the bias binding to catch in both sides. So if one looking like a little bit short on the other, do it on that side and you'll catch both sides in. One done, trim, and let's do the same with the other. So you can see the overall effect is no different to doing it the official way. It's just a quicker process. If I was binding something and it was on the outside of the bag, I would do it the slower method, because it would look better. But for this, it's inside, it's hidden, you're not going to see it. And it gives a nice finish anyway. So let me do the other side. Fold the binding in half. And just slip the raw edge into it and clip in place. Same as previous. I think actually if you bound this nicely, and by the official method, then you could also have the binding on the outside if you wanted to. Obviously swap the zip round, but it would make, it does look quite nice just with the binding on the outside too. Okay, snip off my excess at the ends. And then I'll stitch along the edge to secure that on. Just check both sides. If you have missed anything anywhere, you can always go back and do another stitch line. Looking very pretty. So we're ready to turn it through. Just open your zip. It would have been easier if I'd left it more open, but I've got room to get in there. Just open your zip. And let's turn that through. I like to stick my fingers into the corners, get my nail in and push each corner out separately. I don't like putting pointy tools in things unless I really have to. So the others, 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. I will get my little pointy in there, but this doesn't have a sharp point on it. I don't want any sharp objects poking through my outer fabric. And there we go. So I'm going to take that back to the ironing board and give that another press, and we'll have a look at it. So there we are. So I've given it a nice press. I do press waterproof canvas, by the way, on a warm iron, but just check on a swatch of your own first, because each one's different. Mine presses fine on the front. I wouldn't press it on the back because it has the waterproof coating and that would melt, but it's fine on this. So all you need to do now is fold it in half, whether you added the Velcro or not, and match those bottom edges. I mean, you can press that in place as well, so it's got a nice fold to it. And you've got your double bag finished. So the Velcro will hold that in place. You can open it out and have it flat in your suitcase, fill it with your items, and then when you arrive at your destination, you can fold it in half, put it on your dresser, and it'll stand up nicely with your makeup or your pens or your gadgets, whatever you've got in it. Because it's a number 3 zip, I probably like to dress that up a little bit because they're usually quite a small head. So I'm going to add a little piece of bungee cord to that. So you can buy this kind of bungee cord very cheaply on eBay, just by the metre. And it gives a nice finish to zip ends. You can also buy these little actual zip ends themselves, so you could thread that through and just pull it down tight, and that gives a nice effect, but this is even cheaper. You just cut yourself a short length of that and thread it through. And a knot in that will hold it in place. You can also melt the ends if you want to just make sure they're nice and straight. Oops, sorry. Give it a quick flame, but don't blame me if you burn anything. In fact, don't give it a quick flame, use one of those, it's much safer. So there we go. So that just finishes it nicely. A couple of alternatives if you didn't want to use the Velcro is you can finish it to this point. You can leave it, as I say, it's no problem left, or you could open it and put a couple of rivets through the fold inside, and that'll hold it permanently in your double bag shape. Or you could also add, again alternatively, you could add cam snaps inside to those inside sides, if that's a word. So just open it and literally attach them through the bottom sections only. So that's a pen pouch size. So that's it, ready to fill with all your goodies. Drop it in your beanie baguette and off you pop, ready for a day at work and then a night on the town. You can make the pouch in any size to suit your own requirements. It's so easy to do. For details of how to grab the other free sizes for this pouch, it's all in the text below the video. And once you get the hang of it, you can add a badge, a pocket inside, make it whatever size you want. It's a really simple construction without much interfacing at all. If you are interested in a move on from this and making a true structured double pouch or bag, adding various pockets, chunky zips, different types of straps and a full structure, take a look at my double clutch crossbody pattern that comes in 2 different sizes. Anyway, thanks for bobbing in. I hope you enjoyed today's project. Feel free to join me on my Facebook sewing group and share your twin pouch photos. I'd love to see them. Do sign up for my monthly newsletter on the website to keep you up to date with what's happening. All the links are in the text below the video. So what are you waiting for? Grab the instructions for the other sizes of pouch and go sew!